Cabbage Patch Kids and the orphan trains and the programming of people's minds in an instance called preemptive programming, which means they tell you something and give you the answer to it before you ask the question, and your common sense kicks in. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of phenomena that aren't mentioned very much in the Millennial Kingdom research area. It falls along the lines of mysterious history, even mud flood, but it's still hidden history. One of the aspects we're looking at is old maps. Not that old though, we're talking 1600s, early 1700s. And California was nearly an island. When you look at these old maps, you find, along the San Andreas Fault, you find a large area where it was almost like a little sea in between California. There are even areas along that where it used to be a shipping town or a fishing village within the inland areas of America. The wreckages of old boats have been found, and you're like, how did this heavy wooden boat end up in this area? So the odd point is, we all went to school. We've all been indoctrinated into these public school history classes. And what we find is now, as educated people, Christians, waking up, this Millennial Kingdom reference has really woke up a lot of people. And I began trying to wake up people 20 years ago, and they didn't want to hear the message. They were too comfortable with their living they were making. They were too comfortable in the ideologies that were sold to them. They were too comfortable in their church on Sunday and feel-good messages. And they didn't want to believe, the cognitive dissonance, that anyone was even possible to deceive them. The other thing we're going to talk about is the Grand Canyon. I'm going to talk a little more about this in this area today. And as you look at these images of the Grand Canyon, as I talk to you, your mind is going to suddenly awaken. And it's going to awaken to just how deep the level of deception is integrated into our school system. So I cover a lot of this type of subject, and it's covered in the book Reason to Believe. It's subject matter, of course, we can't talk about. It is the same type of thing as to where you look at tower, let's say, and the petrified trees. And you look at it and you say, oh, well, I remember in school, even in college, they would show us a picture of this and they would say, this formation happened because of a volcano. And, there's these structures, just like the Devil's Tower, all around the world. I didn't know that. They never showed me an image of those. They all have areas that look like water veins. The tree has rings and then has water veins, like a plant has veins where the leaves will suck the water up from the roots. And they've crystallized. And lava does not form in octagonal shapes and different types of geometric shapes repeatedly throughout an entire structure of this ring of this giant volcanic event. So so how you get past the idea that happened is get out a statistics book, an old statistics book you haven't used in years, and figure out how to do statistical probability of that happening. I guarantee you it's going to fall in the null probability range, meaning believing that falls in the idea of non-science, ridiculousness, which leads you to the secondary phase, that it was probably a giant tree. And the book of Enoch was correct when it said that the angels labored at the lofty trees. So let's take a look now at the Grand Canyon. Now, When we were kids, we had no idea what the Grand Canyon was unless we caught some indoctrination show on PBS or something on television. But when we were very young, we would be presented with pictures of the Grand Canyon. They love to show you this place, right? Usually they show you things and give you answers for them when they are afraid it's large enough for you to ask questions. So the Grand Canyon, they tell us that the Snake River, I believe, you'll find people just hostile to anyone giving evidence to something else that goes against their preemptive programming. Now, that sounds overly simple, but once again, these are topics covered and exposed in Reason to Believe book. It shows you just how in depth, how encoded and hidden the methodologies and psychological tactics they use to warp and manipulate the human mind from knowing what's going on. So as we look at this structure, and they told us it was this winding river that goes down, flows down, and then created this almost unbelievable giant carved out structure. As we take a look at this now with the eyes of people awakened and realizing history has been rewritten and things aren't the way they said they were, buildings weren't constructed, these millennial kingdom buildings weren't made with primitive tools and ox carts. They didn't dig the foundation of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., this gigantic 4 to 6 stories underground with shovels and pickaxes and wagon carts. No one would have lived long enough just to dig the foundation.
Hey guys, I need you to pause here for a second. Like your future and your life depends on it, because it does. If you've ever felt like history doesn't add up, like the world's been built on a lie, and you're not crazy, so here's what they don't expect. People like us connecting the dots and organizing. That's why I built the Truth Council, not as a fan group, but as a command center for people who are awake and ready. If you're understanding that all of these things from history don't add up, like the building behind me wasn't a temporary structure built out of paper mache or something that was supposed to be there for just a year, that these stories are beyond our common sense. They're absolutely ridiculous at this point in time. And just like this building behind us, where they said they built all of this in like 2 years, and architects have told us that it would have took 2 years just to lay out the foundation work, just to figure out where things might go. What we're looking at, you're going to get real maps and timelines, decode history, spiritual training, things that explain what these elites have spent centuries now, at least since the 1700s, trying to bury from us. And the moment you join, I'm going to send you a free digital copy of the book Reason to Believe. There's actually 3 books that you get for free when you join the Truth Council, and it's right on the membership site when you get in there. That the link is going to be in the description or the comment section. And I'll be straight with you though, this isn't for spectators. This is for people who are like, wow, this stuff is really interesting. It's affecting my life, because everything I think may not be actually true. Therefore, other people can sway my opinion to do things that might be harmful for me. What I'm telling you guys inside the Truth Council is where people like us discuss information and things we found that actually goes completely against the narrative. And it's a private group, of course, but you can share this information for any of those skeptical relatives or friends you have, that the information that goes in front of them will make them just have to cringe in their self-righteous boot, especially hiding these things that were in America and all over the world from us. So thanks a lot, guys. Just wanted to pause for a second so you could know that you could join the Truth Council and get on the inside of knowing what is really going on in our world.
So the Grand Canyon now, as we take a good hard look at it, I want you now to pull up images of strip mines. Now take a look. Find on the internet of modern strip mines. Of course, they're much smaller than the Grand Canyon. But all around the world, when you look at these megalithic type of these earth-moving machines, the giant trucks where you could fit a bunch of dump trucks in the back of this one truck, and these claw-like cranes that have these giant shovels on them. They used to use them, the steam engine ones, but now they have these massive digging, and they rake into the side of this cliff, just constantly digging. You'll look at these, and then you'll look at the Grand Canyon, and the structure and the formation is nearly identical. Also, here's the oddity. I'll let this sink in because, of course, I'm skeptical about a lot of stuff. Not as skeptical as I used to be. Along this river going through the Grand Canyon, there are turns in the river that are 90 degrees. In other words, here's this river flowing along, and then suddenly, 90-degree turn, and then it meanders down some more. That doesn't happen in nature. And again, referring back to statistical probability, it's not going to happen more than once in the river. So, and we're talking about carved rock. We're not talking about soft dirt or something. Carved rock. I'm proposing to you the Grand Canyon was a giant strip mine. Along the Grand Canyon, you also will find things that they'll look like structures, melted structures, some of them. And the oddity of them is they look Egyptian.
It's time to know who you are, where you came from, where you live, and who's hiding it. You need the intel and the Truth Council right now. Go to the comments and join us.